Hello everyone and welcome to this in-depth look at a truly historic and shocking development in American politics. I'm your host name, and in this special extended video, we'll be diving deep into the details surrounding the conviction of former US President Donald Trump on multiple felony charges. This is a story that has been years in the making, with countless twists and turns along the way. But now, the final chapter has been written. Donald Trump has become the first former president in US history to be found guilty of serious criminal offenses. The ramifications of this conviction will be felt for years, if not decades, to come. So buckle up, because this is going to be an intense and captivating journey through one of the most dramatic and consequential legal sagas of our time. Let's begin. It was a stunning fall from grace that few could have predicted when Donald Trump first rode down that golden escalator in Trump Tower back in 2015 to announce his candidacy for president. At the time, Trump was seen by many as a political outsider and long shot, a bombastic and controversial figure who would never be taken seriously. But against all odds, Trump managed to defy the critics and the pundits, riding a wave of populist anger and anti-establishment sentiment all the way to the White House. His improbable victory in the 2016 election sent shockwaves through the political establishment, and for the next 4 years, Trump's presidency would be marked by constant turmoil, scandal, and controversy. Even as Trump fought off one scandal after another, he was able to maintain a loyal base of supporters who remained steadfastly behind him. But as his time in office came to an end, the walls began to close in. The 2020 election defeat, the Capitol riots, and the subsequent impeachment trial all contributed to a perfect storm of legal jeopardy for the former president. It was in the aftermath of the Capitol attack that federal prosecutors began to hone in on Trump with renewed intensity. Various investigations into the former president's conduct had been ongoing for years, but now there was a heightened sense of urgency and purpose. The stakes had never been higher. Ultimately, it was Trump's efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election that proved to be his undoing. Prosecutors were able to piece together a damning case that Trump had knowingly and systematically attempted to subvert the democratic process, engaging in a multifaceted campaign of fraud, intimidation, and obstruction. The details that emerged were truly shocking. Evidence showed that Trump and his inner circle had actively sought to exploit vulnerabilities in the electoral system, spreading baseless claims of widespread voter fraud and pressuring state officials to find additional votes. There were also bombshell revelations about Trump's attempts to strong-arm the Justice Department into lending legitimacy to his false claims of a stolen election. But the prosecutor's case went even further, uncovering a web of financial crimes that stretched back years. Forensic accounting showed that Trump had engaged in a long-running scheme to manipulate his net worth and assets, defrauding banks, insurers, and tax authorities in the process. Taken together, the prosecution's case painted a disturbing picture of a president who had brazenly abused his power and violated the public trust on multiple fronts. The sheer scale and audacity of Trump's alleged crimes left many Americans reeling. As the trial unfolded in a federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., the nation watched with rapt attention. Trump's legal team fought fiercely to poke holes in the prosecution's case and sway the jury, but in the end, the evidence was simply too overwhelming. After weeks of dramatic testimony and heated legal arguments, the jury delivered its verdict: Donald Trump was guilty on all counts. The former president, who had once seemed untouchable, now faced the prospect of spending years behind bars. For Trump himself, the conviction was a devastating blow. A man who had always prided himself on his ability to beat the system and evade accountability was now staring down the barrel of a lengthy prison sentence. His legacy, which he had worked so hard to shape and protect, now lay in tatters. In the aftermath of the trial, the focus quickly shifted to the question of sentencing. What sort of punishment would be deemed appropriate for a former president found guilty of such serious crimes? It was uncharted territory, and legal experts were divided on how the judge should proceed. Some argued that Trump deserved the maximum possible sentence, given the gravity of his offenses and the need to send a strong message about the consequences of abusing political power. Others contended that leniency was warranted, citing Trump's advanced age and the potential disruption to the country's political stability. Ultimately, the judge opted for a middle ground, sentencing Trump to a total of 12 years in federal prison. It was a significant punishment, but one that fell short of the harshest possible outcome. The former president would have to serve at least 10 years before becoming eligible for parole. For Trump, the prospect of a lengthy prison term was a devastating blow. A man who had always seen himself as being above the law was now facing the very real possibility of dying behind bars. It was a stunning fall from grace, and one that would reverberate through American politics for years to come. As the legal saga unfolded, the political implications became increasingly clear. Trump's conviction sent shockwaves through the Republican Party, which had long stood by the former president despite his numerous scandals and controversies. Many within the GOP leadership were faced with a difficult choice: continue to stand by Trump and risk being tainted by his crimes, or distance themselves and potentially alienate his loyal base of supporters. It was a delicate balancing act, and one that would have far-reaching consequences. For Democrats, Trump's conviction was seen as a vindication of their efforts to hold the former president accountable. However, there were also concerns about the potential for further political polarization and the risk of a backlash from Trump's most ardent supporters. Ultimately, the fallout from Trump's conviction would reverberate far beyond the confines of partisan politics. It raised profound questions about the nature of American democracy, the limits of executive power, and the fragility of the rule of law. As the dust began to settle, the focus shifted to the broader legacy of the Trump presidency and the long-term implications of his conviction. For many, the former president's downfall represented a sobering cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of robust checks and balances. At the same time, the Trump conviction also raised concerns about the potential for political retribution and the weaponization of the legal system. Some worried that the case could set a dangerous precedent, opening the door for future administrations to target their political opponents through the courts. Ultimately, the full ramifications of Trump's conviction will take time to fully unfold. But one thing is certain: this is a moment that will forever alter the course of American history, with profound implications for the country's political landscape and the future of its democratic institutions.